Hello! I've been spending some time recently making a series of videos about building a basic quadcopter and setting it up to fly in first-person view, that is, looking through a camera on the quad while you're flying. This is a hell of a fun thing to do, and to be honest, a little bit addictive. It's like part video game and part real life. You get the thrill of speed and flying without breaking any bones when you crash. This video series is something that I've been planning to do for quite a while now because I get quite a lot of questions about all kinds of things related to this stuff, and I really like to welcome newcomers who are interested in it and to see more people give it a try. But boy, is there a lot to learn when you're just starting out. It almost seems like every answer leads to another question, and it just sort of keeps going on and on like that. Also, when you hear people talking about these radio control topics, there's quite a lot of jargon and technical sounding terms and acronyms and stuff. It's kind of almost like a different language sometimes. And it's only been a few years since I started learning this stuff myself. So the memory of being confused about things and also maybe a little bit overwhelmed at times is still relatively fresh in my mind. So I'm hoping that that perspective might help when trying to explain things. So I wanted to make a how-to series that would start from a complete beginner level and not assume that the viewer knows anything at all about quadcopters or radio control or electronics, and try to cover the most fundamental aspects of how it all works. Basically it's aimed at someone like myself a few years ago, that is, someone who's interested in all this hobby and stuff but a bit clueless about most of what's involved. And it is of course aimed at someone who is interested in building their own quadcopter rather than just buying one ready-made. So I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail in some parts. In fact, much more detail than is actually necessary to build and fly a quad. Some of it's going to be a bit like science class at elementary school at the beginning. So some of the early videos in the series are actually not necessary to watch at all. If you just want to skip to the later parts, most of it should still make sense. But knowing a bit more about what's going on inside will definitely help you in the long run. It'll help you to diagnose and solve problems that come up, and it can also help you to avoid problems happening in the first place. And another motivation for looking at the details is to impress upon the viewer just how non-trivial it is to make something fly like this. That is, how all the parts need to work together just right to keep it in the air. For example, if I was to ask you, what is this quadcopter here doing? If you look at that for a bit and say, well, it's not doing anything, that is the wrong answer. It's actually very, very busy. It's receiving GPS signals from multiple satellites out in space. It's sensing the magnetic field and the gravitational pull of the Earth and a whole lot of other things as well. And any one part of that system going wrong could potentially bring it down. This is something that a newbie without that kind of insight can easily overlook, especially with a ready-to-fly quad that they didn't build themselves. They just simply took it out of a box and started flying it. So what I would like to see is that the newbies coming into this hobby and enjoying it are also not totally clueless newbies that might end up, making mistakes that cause trouble for them and for other people as well. The quad that I'll be building as part of this series is a so-called mini quad, about 25 centimeters diagonally from motor to motor. So it's the type that is pretty fast and agile, the kind that you could do some racing with, not really the type you would use for smooth, slow aerial videos like that. It can, of course, carry a GoPro-sized camera, but the video you'll get is different, that's all. So just to be clear about that, it's not going to be like this one that we just looked at a moment ago, because it will not have any autonomous functions or safety features like return to home. So you'll need to be controlling it manually all the time. By the way, if you are interested in a larger aerial video style quad, almost all of the basic things to consider for building a larger quad are the same as for building this smaller one. But the larger quad will have some extra components like GPS and so on as well. So this video series will actually be a good place to start in either case. Anyway, the total cost for the one that I'll be building was a bit over 300 USD, 325-ish maybe, and that's including the transmitter, battery charger, and a couple of batteries as well. So it's a pretty basic one. I have chosen some parts that are mostly in the budget category. It's not going to give any blistering high performance, but it will still be great to get started with. And as a newbie, you'll find something like this a lot easier to handle than some smoking hot, high-powered rocket ship anyway. I actually first decided to make this series about a year and a half ago, and this industry is moving so fast that unfortunately some of the parts are already kind of outdated. I'd still use them because I already have them, and they still work fine, but for a similar cost there are now better options around, so I'll have to mention that other options a bit as I go as well. So in the first few videos I'll give a broad overview of the whole system and give you a primer on some electricity basics. Then I'll go into all the gory details of batteries, and we'll look at how electric motors work and how they are controlled by the quad, and some other various types of components that are typically used, and we'll see how they all fit together and how they communicate with each other in general. And then I'll look at the specific parts that I actually got for my build, and I'll give you some soldering tips that might help you a bit if you haven't done any soldering before. Then we'll put the quad together and twiddle with some settings, and we'll look at battery charging and maintenance. And up to that point, that's probably going to cover about 16 videos, so that'll give you an idea of how much detail I'll be going into there. And then from part 17, I will look at some software simulators that should help you to get to grips with controlling a quad, including a quite simple little simulator that I made specifically for this video series. And then after that, we'll finally get it flying, and I'll offer some tips for learning to fly first in line of sight and then in FPV after that. Then we will have a quick look at how you can tune the behavior of the quad to improve the performance a bit, and we'll see how we can change the settings even out in the field without having a computer nearby. So it's going to be over 20 videos in total, but like I say, you don't really need to watch most of the earlier ones. If you're more interested in just buying a pre-built, ready-to-fly quad, you could probably start at that part 17, where we start looking at how to actually control it. Sooner or later, though, you're probably going to break something or have some mysterious problems, so you might want to watch the other topics at some point eventually, just in case that knowledge might help you figure something out. Now, there are probably also people out there thinking, well, this is really interesting and all, but looks like a lot of stuff to learn for something I might end up not even liking very much, and $300, man, that's just a bit too much. For those people, you might like to try something like this. For under $15, I think in most places, you can get a little indoor quad and get a small taste of what it's all about. That's including transmitter and battery and charger in this set. These are really great because they're small enough to fly indoors and you're not going to break anything. This one has little guards to let you bump into a wall a bit without causing a crash. This particular one is not FPV capable, but there are others out there in similar size for not too much more that are actually FPV capable. So that would be one way to give it a try without having to worry about all of the gory details that we're looking at in this series. So I think I'll end this intro here, but before I do, I would just like to say to my regular subscribers, many of whom are quadcopter nerds already, that this series will probably seem laboriously slow moving for you, and there may not be much, if anything, that is new for you to learn. But you might know somebody interested in getting into this stuff. If so, you could perhaps let them know about it, and it might help to reduce some of the barrage of questions that you'll be dealing with yourself otherwise. Anyway, that's all for now. See you next time.